The basics. The basics never get old. Everything has basics or general truths which exist for the life of it. Let us take a house, for example. What we may think of first, when it comes to a house's basics, may be incorrect. Even though they can be useful or even help keep us alive, not every aspect of a house is necessary and or as important as we make it. So, what would you consider to be the core necessity of a house that makes it a house? Many of us probably realize that TVs, couches, or even refrigerators aren't needed. Is it still a house without flooring, wallpaper, paint, shingles, gutters, or separate rooms? It is, but it is a far less comfortable one. What about windows, doors, walls, or a roof? What if everything we initially consider, and even what we think about, is wrong? To perceive and understand what the necessary core of a house is, you have to look beyond what you already see. You have to actually go inside, and then travel deeper into the house than you have to in order to live in it. In order to find out what truly makes that house a house, however, you have to care more about the question and the answer than anything else you want, think, or feel. You can presume the answer without looking, be perfectly content, certain you are correct, and quite happy. No one else is going to come challenge you. We all have the right to be wrong and never realize it, just as we all have the right to be correct and think we're wrong. The reality, however, is that within that house the actual necessary part of it exists. It will continue to exist for as long as you live in that house, whether you realize it or not. So, I'll try not to drag this metaphor business on for too much longer and get to the point, but I want you to be open to recognizing your assumptions and admitting if they are wrong. I want you to think about what really makes something exist, what truly holds it together, and in the case of life, what truly makes it function. Some parts of the house, just like some parts of our being, are only needed as far as to protect the one part which is truly needed above all else. And because these are the parts we visually sense, we deny acknowledgement and understanding of what is truly most valuable. The walls and roof of a house are necessary only to the extent that they protect what's in it and create the form. But the structural support within is needed for them to exist. And the strong, reliable foundation is deeper within, and is required for anything extra to be built upon it. We work the same way in a sense. What we sense on the outside we often consider as most meaningful and defining our existence. Our skin, shape, faces, height, weight, hair, the sound of our voice, and physical abilities. What exists below the surface we know exists, but do not sense and therefore do not really live for, despite that it allows for what we do. Our skeletal structure, organs, tissue, muscle, tendons, etc. Just try having beautiful skin without bones. And then deeper within us that truly necessary aspect exists, unseen and unrecognized, yet the core of our existence, responsible for everything it has been and also what it may become. A foundation of a house isn't exactly a great example of our core existence, because houses are man-made, and therefore can change in different ways. Not all houses or their foundations are formed the same way and or out of the same materials. We humans, however, are made of the same materials, formed in the same way. There are changes within our species, but not differentiating ones, when it comes to our necessary/basic humanity. Not all of the basics are equal, but all of the basics are there. In other words, the aspects of our humanity which I am referring to now as our foundation exist within all of us. Each foundation has varying strengths and weaknesses, but each foundation exists as does any other. Our foundation is of utmost importance, no matter the specifics of it or what has been built atop it. Many times we build over our foundation without knowing the foundation, without taking the time to see our dimensions, without bothering to understand our structural integrity, weak points and capacity, and without working to repair and improve it. In the same vein, we do not perceive, honestly understand, and give credit to our strong points, at least not accurately. We are all guilty of jumping the gun, creating, being, and living before understanding and caring. We are also all victims of a false start. A gunshot is a gunshot in our minds. We don't automatically distinguish which is the right one, much less if any are. We sense and go. I know I'm combining analogies now, but the point is that our internal instincts translate our external influences to shape our lives. Because of this, we assume what we know is all that is there, and that it is enough. Neither is true, however. When you build before you know what's holding you up, all you can create is a flimsy and flat facade. It's kind of like a set piece on a stage or production. Maybe you can make that facade look like a skyscraper, but when it comes to humans, there are no skyscrapers, and there aren't supposed to be. It is a difficult idea for us to wrap our heads around, but we are not destined at all. We are not supposed to be anything at all. This in no way refers to what we are capable of, however. If you believe in destiny, and that you cannot change the future, then you obviously limit your ability to do so. But no matter how we limit ourselves, it doesn't take away from what we are capable of. Whether we choose to or not, we are always capable of discovering who we really are, why we are what we are, and altering both. So no matter who you are, whether you understand my ideas, whether you agree with them, and whether you care for them, I encourage you to still read this book, to turn on a light, step into the base of your mind, and spend some time with your foundation. And I want you to do this for a very specific and contradictory reason. This reason is unquestionably specific. Absolutely nothing else is, ever has been, or ever will be the same as it. That is specific. Now, the reason is contradictory is because it doesn't seem to mesh with what you know. It is not something we are raised to have an understanding of, so it contradicts with our current understanding of our own lives. Don't do this because I'm asking you to. Don't do it because words in a book suggest it. Don't do it because the above analogy sounds cool. And don't even do it because you think you should. Because you can't truly do it for any of those reasons anyway. You should go on this internal journey to discover your true existence only if you know as an absolute personal truth that it exists at all. If you have no idea what I'm referring to, and do not realize that there is more to you than you recognize and live for, then reading that there is won't mean much. But if you are willing to realize that there is more to your humanity than you implement in your daily existence, then there is no doubt in my mind that you want to explore it. We have to sense something is there before we can want it. Your humanity is no different. However, I do not believe that any of us do not have any sense of a dormant existence, part of our being that we know exists but almost never think about, understand, or choose to use. I believe we all know it exists because I know that it exists. I know that the real aspects of myself exist, have existed as long as me, and will exist as long as I do. I know that my true being has existed without me being aware of it. I know that its presence and ability to influence/create my existence are not dependent on whether or not, or to what extent I perceive it and control it. It is always the driving force of my being. I also know, however, that I can perceive and control it. Therefore, my self is relative to my perception and control over it. So, despite that part of my true being is always there, and always partly in control, I can change it, utilize it, overpower it, and therefore change my own existence. My self is always going to be the engine, but how well and how often I drive, if ever, is relative/variable. Whether you consider my knowledge right or wrong, though I hope you still get something from the book. If I'm right, you may choose to learn more about this part of your being. If I am wrong, you may choose to get a sense of it and then learn more about it. You see, even if neither of us knows that you exist, you still do. Even if you do not believe you are capable of teaching yourself more about yourself, you most certainly are anyway. And even if you do not realize that you can benefit from such knowledge, you certainly can. And if you do fall into any one or more of these categories, where you don't think there is more to yourself, don't think you can teach yourself about it, and or don't think it will benefit you, let me make my position on your belief clear. First off, know that there is absolutely nothing I can say or write that will change your mind. The mental positions we take regarding ourselves are always strict. Typically, the longer we live with that position, the tougher the protective barrier around it becomes. We are all so protective and cautious about anything that contradicts what we already know about ourselves for good reason. We are the ones who have to deal with it. We are the only ones that get to live with and really understand our own beings, so it is insulting to think that we don't realize everything which we can. If you cannot get past this barrier, I am not sure what to tell you other than, just because the truth hurts doesn't make it something else. Secondly, I hope you believe me when I state that I do not want to change your mind. I don't want an ounce of credit or an ounce of blame for anything that you learn or don't learn, do or do not do. Of course, I know that I cannot change you anyway, but even if I did not realize this, I'd still make this second declaration. I want you to discover your own knowledge that will cause you to change your own mind. I do not assume you will do that, and neither should you. Not because you don't realize a deeper self, but because you are human. Whether we know there is something more to us or not, we all still suffer from the same weaknesses, which make changing our own mind by ourselves so difficult. I suffer from these weaknesses in the same ways everyone else does. My point is that they exist, and if you aren't honest about being weak, there is no way you can be honest about what you want. So, despite that I can't change you, realize that you can and that only those weaknesses of yours would prevent it. Thirdly, I want to share that I know how you feel. I know how it feels to be told something significant exists which you honestly have no belief in. I know how it feels to hear other humans utter what they consider unquestionable truths while you hold different ones. I understand what it is like to watch others live for ideas you consider unreasonable at best. It can be painful, annoying, disappointing, and/or heartbreaking. This brings me to my fourth and final thought regarding you non-believers of an unrealized self. I'd like to thank you for having the willingness and open-mindedness to understand and consider a perspective distinctly unique from your own. We are not talking small potatoes here. How we view ourselves is huge. It is beyond comparison in terms of experience, change, choice, and importance. The act of honestly recognizing a vastly alternative perspective of your being, actually allowing it to create new questions, and then truthfully giving it weight in a decisive process, is more commendable and honorable than most mental processes in our heads. So, no matter what you believe, if you can do that, you will have moved towards a greater understanding of yourself, whether you know it or not.